Hello, thank you for joining the Getronics Workspace Mobility webinar. It's all about apps. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Caroline Montgomery, and I'm the Director of Application Services for Getronics in the UK. Today we are going to discuss the mobile era and how this fits into the enterprise digital strategy, the challenges CIOs and IT directors face in their enterprises with this strategy and the need to act. I'll outline the different mobile strategies and architectures, the terminology used, the parameters to consider, and I'll give you some examples and talk about how to make the right decisions. I'll follow this by outlining the likely business impact and benefits of having the right mobile strategy in place, and then we will then move on to a question and answer session, which will give you the opportunity to ask any questions you may have. Let's start by talking about the mobile era. According to Gartner, the third era of enterprise IT has arrived, a digital now, digital first reality. To seize this opportunity and succeed, organisations need to flip information and technology leadership from legacy first to digital first. So what does this mean? Let me try and explain. Mobile phones have revolutionised the world. They appeared in the 80s and were large, clunky devices that people carried around using mainly for work-related voice communication. Over the years, they have been streamlined and functionality greatly increased. In 2007, Steve Jobs presented the iPhone, which has taken mobile phones and mobility to another level. Nowadays, smartphones are technically nearly as powerful as a desktop computer and contain a lot of smart features not available in the desktop, such as a compass, a GPS locator, and even a camera. All are integrated features of a smartphone. Mobility is changing the paradigm of how people interact with the digital world. They want information in real time, wherever they are, at whatever time they decide. The market for mobile apps is still growing rapidly, forecasting to reach 268 billion downloads in 2017 and $77 billion of revenue, increasing by 27% year on year. Even though there has been this incredible growth in mobility, at an enterprise level there are still many companies facing the challenge of defining a mobility strategy in their business. Getronics hope this webinar will help companies in shaping their mobility strategy by understanding the choices available and how to decide which of those choices works for them based on the different architecture and development strategies available, and the benefits they can expect by adopting the right strategy for their enterprise. Getronics is leading the next generation of mobility, focusing on innovative, secure and integrated solutions. As I mentioned in the introduction, many CIOs and IT directors face difficult challenges as the digital world takes hold. For example, legacy estates, lack of investment and complex business processes are all holding them back from progressing with their mobile strategies as they become increasingly under pressure to improve the efficiency of the business by using technology to reduce costs and improve agility. Employees want to access their business applications on their mobile devices. This means they need to have access to back-end systems and tools. Operations need the workforce out in the field to access systems to update on their activities and track their locations or time to next customer. To do this, they need the workforce to be able to simply access systems while out and about doing their work. The Board of Directors wants to have easy, accessible data on how the business is performing, with dashboards showing key performance indicators and the ability to drill down into these when they highlight issues. They want these available on tablets and mobile phones. And finally, customers want to access websites through their mobile devices, to buy products, find a location, look at things the company has done previously, as well as to look for offers and promotions. Customers are becoming more aware of how to make the most of mobility and social tools to engage with companies they are considering buying from. In fact, the trend is increasingly moving towards customers using mobile to interact rather than the telephone or desktop. The big question companies have to answer is how to put in place a mobile strategy that considers all the needs coming from the different sources described and more. Let's focus now on the starting point and understand the need to act. It's really important to ask yourselves why your organisation needs a mobile strategy and mobile app services. Some of the questions I would ask if I was thinking about a mobile strategy would be, are your employees frustrated with the slow manual business processes? Does your organisation suffer from not having responsive access to useful information? Does the board have access to the KPIs of the business? Are you able to capture data in real time? Is your website user and mobile friendly? Are your customers abandoning your website? Are your customers receiving a great mobile experience? The answer to these questions will tell you if you need to act or not. And to prevent your enterprise from falling behind in the digital world, you need to consider these questions very carefully. So that brings us on to how do you start the journey and what are the steps you need to take to make sure you keep your competitive advantage as the mobile era moves to the next level. It starts with the overall business digital strategy and the need for the mobile strategy to be aligned. These are not isolated plans and roadmaps. All departments need to be engaged and joined together to deliver solutions for the business. As mentioned, the journey starts with a digital strategy and working out how the appropriate mobility strategy aligns. Once this is understood, it's then about focusing on the development roadmap, the testing approach, and finally the deployment plan to deliver. The different decisions made in each of these steps will drive the decisions made about mobility. For us to start on this journey, it's important to focus in the typologies of mobile apps that should be considered to find the right strategy. There are three types of mobile architectures to choose from: full native, hybrid, and full web. The decision in following one path or another will determine our success in the mobility world, so it's very important to know what we should consider to make the right decision. So, what are we talking about? Let's start by understanding the terminology. Native. This is a type of app that needs to be installed on a device and has been developed using native libraries. These apps come from the markets, mainly App Store, Google Play, BlackBerry World, or the Windows Store. They can also be an app developed by a company for internal use, installed through a mobile device management system or manually. Hybrid is pretty similar to a native app. The only difference is this type of app has been developed with a cross-platform approach. This means HTML or JavaScript content is embedded inside the app, which allows it to be shared with all the different native operating systems. Web, the third approach, is not an app itself. It is a specific look and feel that makes the functionality of the website more friendly or ready to be used on a mobile device. It can look like an app, but it's not installed in the device. It's accessed through the browser. Now we understand the terminology, we need to consider the different parameters that will drive our decisions about our mobile strategy. There are several paths, but we need to get to one target. To do this, we need guidance to make the right decisions, which needs us to consider a set of parameters that will impact the decisions we make, such as what access do we need to the device hardware? Our smartphones have a set of features that are very useful if we want to develop an app. As mentioned earlier, the camera, the GPS, the compass, and more. If we need to access this functionality, we will need to take this into account. The access to the device hardware is different in each of the strategies. We need to consider what the user experience it needs to be like. The user experience obviously is extremely dependent on our target users. User experience is related to the satisfaction of our customers with their digital experience throughout our app. If the app is going to be used to attract customers, it will need to have the wow user experience. If the app is internal for the field engineers, for example, we may consider a less wow, more simplified user experience. We need to consider how the app will be maintained and what's the future roadmap of it. How expensive and complex is the development and subsequent maintenance? What about device compatibility? This is about how the app fits into the user's device, and it's an important factor based on the user experience, and we will see this difference later on. There's also the consideration of how we will distribute the app. The way our users will access the app will be very important in the decision-making process. Native and hybrid apps need to be installed in the device, which means they have to be distributed in a public or private market or with an ad hoc deployment strategy. Web apps do not need to be deployed. We need to consider the potential number of users we are likely to have. We may consider reducing the user expectations to increase the potential number of users we can reach with our app. How often do we need to update our apps? Updating the app is radically different if we have a real app installed in the device rather than having web access to our website. We need to consider if we need to use push notifications. Push notifications are the notifications installed on the device app which receive and show in the messages on our smartphone main screen. They are very useful to maintain a fluent communication with users. We need to think about if we need to have a data connection. It's important to think about if users have easy access to a data connection or not. This may determine the type of app to be developed. Levels of performance are essential to a positive user experience. The performance is important to consider if you want to have a positive user experience. Of course, there are always other important parameters to consider, but in our experience, in 99% of situations, the parameters that I've highlighted will allow you to make the right decision in terms of your mobile strategy. At Getronics, we have developed a matrix to understand quickly the level of fulfillment of each strategy for each parameter. We have defined 4 levels of fulfillment to allow us to make the comparison. Optimal, perfect fulfillment for the parameter. Good, the parameter is good but could be better. Partial, the strategy has some limitations. And not supported, this parameter cannot be supported by this strategy. By going deeper into each of the parameters, we will be able to make the right decisions. Let's start with the device hardware. It is possible with all 3 strategy options to access device hardware. Obviously, native apps has a direct access to the device, as this will use native libraries. Web access has some limitations, such as not being able to access all the device features. Hybrid apps can be considered very similar to native, as the only difference being that if we needed to access a specific feature not accessible via HTML/JavaScript, we can create a full native plugin to do this that can coexist with the hybrid app. However, this adds additional cost. The user experience in native apps is usually the best experience out of all 3 types. Although in the last few months we have seen an enormous improvement in the user experience of hybrid apps. Web apps are only a good option if our users don't want to install an app on their device. It really depends on the expectations of the users. Moving on to the development and maintenance costs depends on our target device. If we want to create an app for one of the platforms, i.e. Android, iOS, BlackBerry, Windows Phone, the development and maintenance costs are very similar. If we need to cover several operating systems, the most cost-effective option is hybrid or web, as we develop one or more of all the platforms. If we talk about compatibility, the full compatibility with a specific platform can be achieved with a full native app. By thinking wider, with both a hybrid or web approach, we can reach more ranges of devices using one development. To summarise, full native apps have better compatibility than the others, but the hybrid and web reach more types of devices and some compatibility issues specifically in old devices. In thinking about distribution, it's important to understand that for a native or hybrid app, this must be done through the app market, public or private, or using specific tools. But we need always to remember that there will need to be a deployment as the apps are installed into the devices. A full web app doesn't need any deployment onto devices, so it's the best option if you want to eliminate any distribution tasks. When we consider the potential number of users, again, hybrid and web can reach nearly all the platforms. More with web, as this is only needs a browser. Hybrid apps can reach the most important platforms, for example, iOS, Android, Windows Phone, and BlackBerry. If your target is a specific platform, only iOS, for example, a native strategy will get on better with our target users. When it comes to a time when you need to update the app's update for a full native app will need a new version of the app followed by a new deployment published to the App Store. The hybrid app content can be updated automatically, and web apps doesn't need any update process at all, as the content and user interface is on the web. If the requirement is to have push notifications, this will require a native or hybrid app. This feature is not supported in the web. The need for a data connection is important. We can develop native and hybrid apps with no need for a data connection, as everything can be embedded in the app. Native apps provide the optimal position because all the front end is inside the app, reducing the data consumption needed. Web apps need a connection to work. The performance of an app is optimal when we use the native libraries designed by the platform vendors. Native allows us ways to work offline. Hybrid apps performance is also good as it uses a mix of native and web with the content embedded in the app itself. It's important to also understand the performance, good or bad, of a web app. It's normally related to the user's data connection. With a very good data connection, a web app can work perfectly well, which means we cannot guarantee a perfect performance all the time if the connection is not so good. Hopefully this has been useful in helping to understand the parameters that need to be considered and has given you a good understanding in the decisions that need to be made to develop a mobile strategy. Let's take a look at some examples. So, let's talk about good examples of popular full native apps. One of the most popular is WhatsApp, instant messaging with more than 5 million users. It's for sure a great app. Shazam is another good example. The app recognises songs by listening with our smartphone. It's a must-have in the young people's smartphones. The last example is one of the apps developed by Getronics. Kinesis is the app to provide value-added services for a fuel card service provided by Radius Payment Solutions. Radius already have value-added services on the web accessed by a desktop or tablet by their customers, but they recognised they needed a mobile app to provide a great user experience for the same users, accessed via their mobile devices. The joint working project delivered a full native app for iOS and Android, accessing the existing Radius web services layer to reach the GPS location of every vehicle the customer had in real time. A great example of a full native app integrated with existing services, providing a great user experience. The anticipated outcome is to improve user satisfaction and customer loyalty. Some popular hybrid apps are Facebook and LinkedIn, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. The last example is the Aena app developed by Getronics. Aena is the single operator of all the 45 Spanish airports. This app allows users of the airport to receive real-time information for their flights. It sends push notifications to their devices on a real-time basis. It provides indoor maps of the airport. It allows for parking booking, including payment. And it's also integrated with Bluetooth sensors known as iBeacons in the airport. This provides real-time information on things like meal deals, time from their current location to reach the gate, and alerts to go to the gate, and many, many more features. You will see there is very little difference between a native app and a hybrid app. Both are getting a really great user experience. And finally, looking at web apps, there are some great examples of web apps out in the internet. The key here is that they have been developed to use on mobile devices. In some instances, you can access a site that has not been developed for mobility and find it extremely frustrating to use as many of the key features are not accessible. The third example shown is the Connectus mobile website, a member of the Getronics organisation that specialises in applications and has a depth of capability in mobility. By now, I hope you understand why a mobile strategy is important, how it fits with the digital strategy, the type of architectures you can choose from, and the parameters that affect the decisions that you make. Now let's move on to the decision matrix and understand which questions are key to ask before making a decision. We have selected 5 questions that we think will help, but there are always more, and they are very much dependent on your organisation and its priorities. The first question is, how often will your users use the app? If it's a one-time app use, maybe it's enough if we provide a mobile website. If it's used daily, the preference should be a full native app solution. How many users do we have? Well, for a few users, the answer is difficult. If they need the app to develop their work, then a native full app would be the preference. If the number and variety of users is high, the decision will depend on the type of users and the platforms involved. When we're talking about how many different platforms that need to be supported, if you need to support more than one platform, a hybrid or web strategy is more beneficial. When we're considering the customer experience and what customer experience do I want to deliver, as mentioned earlier, the best user experience will be reached with the native or hybrid apps. But if this is not one of our first priorities, a mobile site could be fine. The final question is, how do I want to communicate and interact with my users? If we want to leverage the benefits of the push notifications, I need hybrid or a full native. If I don't need this, maybe a mobile site is enough. Each of you probably know the right questions to ask for you to decide based on what you've learnt and already know and your organisation. What is really important is thinking about what these questions are before making a decision. It's important that we also recognise the business impact of mobility on an organisation and the benefits these will bring. It will speed up business process and efficiency by giving access to business mobile apps to your employees in any location and improve efficiency by up to 50% of internal processes. By having access to key information anytime, anywhere, by integrating mobile apps with existing legacy applications, you will have information available real-time in the format that's right for the user. Being able to work with company-sensitive information and not being worried about security and confidentiality, thanks to mobile device management solutions, is a must. Being able to reach more customers through their mobile devices, understanding their behaviours and buying patterns, being able to communicate with them in a way that's easy and effective. It's understood that customers are more likely to buy a mobile-friendly site. Research estimates 67% of consumers will buy from a mobile-friendly site. I've just described the business benefits based on the business impact. With the right mobile strategy, you can achieve even more benefits in terms of business efficiency and customer satisfaction. It will ensure the CIO or IT director have a mobile strategy aligned with the digital strategy of the organisation. This will not only improve the effectiveness of the business and the impact this will have externally, but it is also likely to reduce the company's costs. One example being the app's development costs. All the apps will be based and related to the same rationalised strategy, rather than having every department thinking about how to mobilise their processes in an isolated manner. We have seen with our customers that have had a mobile strategy how they have reduced overall costs of the organisation by removing inefficiency, manual intervention and paper-based processes, at the same time as increasing revenue by engaging more easily with their customers, and also to make communication easier for the customers to buy their products and services. So, why is Getronics a great partner in relation to your mobility journey? At Getronics, we have more than 3,000 application specialists in the organisation, and a high percentage of these professionals have mobility expertise to provide some of the best solutions in the digital world. We have proven domain and technical experience and capability in all the architecture choices, supporting customers to develop their mobile strategies, as well as having the mechanisms available to us to deliver secure mobile apps to our customers. Getronics has a very competitive delivery model based on a nearshore strategy. It allows us to provide end-to-end projects covering all aspects of mobility, from security aspects to integration and cloud services provision. We have been working in mobility apps for over 10 years. It started from the beginning in the early 2000s with the Windows mobile apps development, before the smartphones. And now in the new world of smartphones led by Android and iOS, we have continued to develop our depth and experience of enterprise apps. At Getronics, we provide an end-to-end service wrap from the initial consultation to design, build and ongoing support and maintenance. Security is integrated into our approach, and we bring with us our extensive experience and expertise in the workspace, which allows us to combine cloud, online, social and mobile to develop great solutions for our customers. I hope this webinar has been informative and useful to you, and thank you for listening. We will now move on to a question and answer session. And at this stage, I would like to introduce my colleague, Jorge de Pardo Lira. Jorge comes from our organisation in Spain, bringing with him a depth of experience in applications development and mobility. If you have any questions, press the blue button on the left of the screen. Thank you very much. Okay, we're starting to get some questions through now. Let's start with the first question. So the first question is, why would I choose you over others to help me develop my mobile strategy? Jorge, would you like to answer that?
Yes. Well, it is probably a long question to answer, but we could summarize, and we started developing mobility solutions in Spain in the early 2000s. We have a large team there in Spain developing, so we can have very competitive price solutions. We have also a management team on site in the UK with a deep experience in mobility, and at the end we can provide as Getronics an end-to-end solution, so we can provide backend systems, middleware, services layers, mobile apps, including graphic design, user experience analysis. So we have all the pieces to provide the best mobility solutions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've got another question now. So we're being asked around what evidence do we have that demonstrates that we can realistically achieve over 50% of efficiency savings in the business by adopting the right mobile strategy?
Well, tricky question again. This is actually an estimation based on experiences with different customers, but it really depends on the business. Not all the business can get the same efficiency. For example, receiving information either ahead of time or on time is crucial in a hospital, in health, for an engineer working on the field, or in banking, for example. Mobility can dually improve the processes to increase the efficiency, and well, these percentages are coming from Gartner analysis, getting information from different business. But depending on the type of business you have, the efficiency can be increased in maybe 25, 50 or more even.
I think it's right to say that Gartner regularly quotes this sort of level of improvement in most of their papers around mobility as well. Okay. Okay, we've got a question here around the strategies. So the question is, which of the strategies outlined in your opinion, so in our opinion, Jorge, is the most secure?
In my opinion, all the strategies we have mentioned in the webinar are secure because the security itself is in the middleware, not in the app. The app must be secure, but we have to implement the security in the middleware. Anyway, I should mention that it's much more difficult to hack into a native app than an app based on HTML, but this doesn't mean that a hybrid app is not secure. They are all secure, but probably it's more difficult to hack into a native app.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've got another question here around integration. So what's the integration approach used to connect with the back-end system? So that's wanting to understand how we integrate the applications into the back-end systems.
This obviously depends on the back-end systems, but as developers, we should choose to use a REST-JSON layer with REST-JSON services or a SOAP web services layer. But it really depends on the complexity. Sometimes an enterprise service bus will be needed to connect with all the backend systems. And if we are involved in complex processes of the company, sometimes a BPM tool, a business process management tool, is important, and we have to use to connect the steps of the different processes.
Okay, let's take another question. I think this is probably going to be our last question. So the question we're being asked, Jorge, is can the different development strategies coexist?
Yes, obviously they can, and they coexist in most companies because of the lack of a strategy. But I should say that if a company has a lot of customers, I should suggest using at least two of the strategies, one with an installed app, native or hybrid, and having a full responsive design web to reach more customers. If we are a B2B company, probably we have to split the strategy at least in two. One strategy for providing mobility to employees, and other different or similar strategy depending on the company to provide services to our customers. At the end, mobility has moved from being something in the future to now being a must-have in everything we develop. So when we develop a new app in the company, from now we have to think that this new development application or system has to be mobile. So at the end, it's normal that different strategies coexist, but we need to think beforehand in the parameters we mentioned in the webinar to choose the right strategy for each situation.
Okay, thank you, Jorge. I think that's all we've got time for now, but thank you very much for the questions. Any other questions that we've got here, we'll make sure that we send answers out to those questions asked by email. So all I'd like to say now is really thank you very much for listening. I hope that's been useful for you, and look forward to talking to you again. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.